amateur and a YouTube amateur, and welcome to my channel. This here is my Caboodle with all the makeup products I used in the month of March. If you haven't seen my previous times doing these videos, I did one in January and one in February. Basically, I'm trying to familiarize myself better with the makeup I already own by sticking to a small curated amount every month, either rediscovering some underappreciated products or realizing that there's some stuff in my collection that I really can just part with. I know I'm really late filming this video. We are already a week into April, and Lord knows when you're gonna end up seeing this. I've been really busy with work the past month. I started a new job and didn't really have all that much time to film or even to really think about what I wanted to say in this video, which is why I am just getting around to it now. I'll be honest, once I got into the month, I really wasn't all that excited about my makeup options, and that's a problem. A lot of the eyeshadows were pretty neutral, some of the products were kind of poor quality, and for that reason, I have decided to get rid of quite a few things from this month, and I will mention those as I go along. There are 4 main brands that I pulled from this month, 2 that I own a lot from, and the other 2 that I've just got a few things here and there. The first of those brands is e.l.f. I have owned a lot of e.l.f. products over the years. It's one of the first companies that I started out my makeup journey by ordering from them online. They are so accessible and so inexpensive. Like, there are core products in their line that are like $3 US. They sell them at Walmart and Old Navy of all places, and they just started selling them, I know, in Shoppers Drug Mart, I think within the last year or 2. Some of the more limited edition collections that they run are only available on their website, but I'm fine with that. Like, they have enough staple products to be excited about, and they do introduce more products to those lines on a regular basis that I'm fine with having to order online occasionally. I also really love their international shipping policy. So if you're an American customer, shipping is $4.95, and I think international shipping is around the $7 mark. However, if you get a promo for free shipping, or you spend like the minimum amount, I think it's like $25, where an American customer would normally get free shipping, they will deduct the $4.95 from the international shipping cost, and you only end up paying like $2, which I think is really awesome. It's a great compromise if you can't provide completely free shipping, and I really wish a lot more companies would do that. I haven't been buying from e.l.f. as much recently, but I also kind of feel like if I don't like something, and this is true of a lot of drugstore brands, I have an easier time parting with it than something from a more expensive brand because I just don't see it as much of a waste of money. However, in spite of their cheap price points, a lot of their stuff is really top quality. Ofra is a brand that's really well known for their lipsticks and their highlighters in particular. They do a lot of collaborations with influencers, and they are not sold in Sephora. As far as I know, they are only available on their own website. As a result, I've never actually bought anything directly from them. Everything I've received has been from some kind of subscription, but everything that I've tried from them has been amazing. BareMinerals is another brand, one that I've only really started trying recently. I know their selling point is that they use a lot of like natural ingredients in their products, and they were one of the first kind of mainstream brands in that category, and they make a lot of powder products. And so far, everything I've tried from them has been pretty good. Finally, Ciate London is a brand that I've only ever gotten in subscription boxes. Their packaging looks pretty high-end. I don't really know a lot about them as a brand, but I've had some pretty mixed results with the things that I've tried. So let's start off with the Complexion products. Beginning with primer. There was something weird this month. I don't know if it was the fact that I was wearing a mask for work every day or, kind of the change in the temperature outside going into spring, but my face felt really like dry and sort of irritated all the time. And yet it didn't accept any of the hydrating primers. Like, either they would just kind of sit on the surface and feel really oily, or it would just absorb them right away. And then I was left with like really dry skin and really obvious texture just kind of being enhanced by my foundation. To start with, I loved this BareMinerals PrimeTime one when I first used it in the winter. It was also in my January box, so you can just go watch that video for like a full review of it. But even under the same foundations that I was using this month, it really didn't work for me. So this might just have to be something that I only use in the winter. This e.l.f. Hydrating Primer, you can tell like the bottle is cracked. I've had this forever. This might have even been like the very first primer I ever bought. And honestly, I love that their products are so cheap, but the packaging is still pretty nice. This one is an incredibly silicone-y primer, so it has like a lot of slip to it. It is very hydrating, which is good. I used to love it on my dry skin, but I have learned to use it sparingly in certain areas, like around my nose and on my chin, because it'll just lead to breakout. The e.l.f. Prep and Hydrate Balm is such a weird product. This was my favorite thing in the world when I first got it. I think it was like one summer that I used this basically every single day. However, that was under a more lighter coverage, more liquidy foundation than what I currently use. It felt cooling, it felt hydrating, and it was really great. I think this is actually the second or third one that I've had because I have used it up a couple of times. Now, it does look like a glue stick. There's like a blue balm that you twist out the top here. And this one, maybe because it's old, it feels kind of funny. Like I was applying this to my face and it would have like a tingle and not in a good way. It's not dried out because I did keep the little cap on it that you're supposed to keep so that it doesn't dry out. And it does still feel hydrating, but it's more sticky than it used to be. So I really can't imagine using it regularly again. And I think I'm going to throw this away. This e.l.f. Putty primer was like cult status on YouTube when it first came out, and it was impossible to find. It was constantly sold out on their website. I actually bought this when I went to Buffalo a few years ago with a friend of mine, and we went into Target. It was actually the last one on the display. So the big thing about this is that it's supposed to be really great for pore filling, and it can be under certain foundations, but it's also really drying. And like the hydrating one, I wouldn't use it on certain areas of my face, and it can get a little bit patchy, especially if there's any sort of friction. For example, wearing this under a mask, you're just asking for a mess. Also, one thing I have noticed, and this might just be the one that I have, if you notice, there is like a pretty big crater in the middle there. It's because the texture is kind of uneven. So if you run your finger across the top, there's certain areas where it'll just sink in a lot deeper. Like it's very soft in that area. So while I do like it, I wouldn't use it on a daily basis. And after all the hype, I really wasn't as blown away as I was expecting to be. This one from Farsali, it's their Liquid Glass Radiant Skin Serum. I did mention this last month. I gave it another chance and it really didn't do anything. It didn't help my makeup apply any better. I didn't notice a visible difference in the appearance of my skin. If anything, it just made my skin feel a little bit tight. Like there was a very thin layer of like plastic directly on my skin, and I don't really think that's what you want from a primer or from your makeup. And then when I was applying my makeup, it was like I might as well have just been applying it to bare skin. I have decided to give it away to a friend because it's supposed to be very, very expensive. And so I would feel guilty about just throwing it out, even though I didn't pay the full price for it. I got this in a BoxyCharm. She really likes serums and that sort of thing, and she doesn't wear foundation. So hopefully she'll be able to get some use out of it. I also did not even try the Farsali mini liquid powder serum primer, whatever it's called, and that I mentioned in the last month, because since I was already dealing with dry skin this month, I figured that that would just make matters worse. Moving on to foundation, the first one I have is the Becca Ultimate Coverage 24-Hour Foundation. I did already use this in my January video and I talked about it a little bit then, although I noticed I mostly focused on the packaging for some reason. It's really pretty packaging. The foundation itself is great. This is one of my staple products, RIP Becca. I've already gotten to the stage of reusing foundation month to month because I really don't have that many, and especially not in a shade that is suitable for when I'm less tan in the winter. However, it's a pretty mattifying foundation, which usually isn't really much of a problem for me, but this month in particular, there were a lot of days my skin was really dry, and this foundation was just making matters worse. I don't know, maybe the bottle is a little old and so it was just starting to dry up, but this really wasn't what I wanted on those dry skin days. And so I found myself either mixing it with the iconic London drops, which I'll get to in a little bit, or I would slather on a lot of primer and then try to go really light with the foundation, which didn't end up looking very good. The other foundation that I used was the e.l.f. Beautifully Bare Foundation Serum. The shade is light medium. I've tried quite a few of e.l.f. foundation, complexion, BB cream type products over the years, and this one ended up being my favorite. This is the foundation that I was using on a day-to-day basis when I was using that Prep and Hydrate. I caught that. I'm going to drop one thing for video, but if I can catch it, I'm going to leave it in. What was I saying? So that summer that I was using the Prep and Hydrate Balm every single day, this was the foundation I was putting over top of it. And so it made for like a really nice kind of natural finish. My face felt very hydrated. It was very comfortable to wear. I think honestly, you don't get a lot in here, and I would have been using quite a bit every day. So I think this is my third or fourth bottle of this stuff. Unfortunately, I didn't think this through. Then this color is a lot more suitable for how tan I get in the summer rather than in March. So it was a little bit orangey on me. It is kind of watery, but it does spread well. I would use a dense foundation brush rather than a sponge because a sponge would tend to soak up a lot of it. It is pretty light coverage though, which is something that my preferences have kind of moved away from. So I think I'm going to revisit this in the summer, and if I don't like it then I'll get rid of it. This won't survive if I try to hold it up while it's open. So I'm just gonna post a picture of it over here somewhere. It's the e.l.f. Prime and Stay Finishing Powder, and it's in the shade Light Medium. So this broke shortly after I got it. It was actually a replacement. I'd already had one and used it up, and then I literally like opened this and dropped it on the floor. It's a pressed powder, and the pan is very thin, and so it just fell apart. My mom suggested, since there's like a dome to the lid, that I just stick a cotton pad under it and then close the lid and use that to press it back together. And it actually worked, and I only lost a very small amount of it. However, now that I have used up a fair bit and hit pan on it, it's kind of starting to come apart again, and the hinge on the compact is actually broken, so I think it's only a matter of time before this splits open and gets everywhere. I am going to throw this away now just to avoid making that mess, but it has lived a good life, and I actually have bought a backup recently. I'm not going to open that until I have worked through some of the other powders. It is an excellent powder, and it's extremely cheap. This is the BareMinerals Mineral Veil. It's just the original shade. This is obviously a mini. I got it in a mini set around the holidays. It came with that primer as well. I was really curious to try it because I have heard a lot of people rave about this. Okay, now that I've been waving it around, there's a whole bunch sitting on top of the sifter there. But usually it's pretty hard to get out of the packaging because there are only 4 tiny holes there. And I don't have any complaints about how it applies or how it wears on my face, but at the same time, I'm really not sure how much of that I should attribute to the powder itself, because I honestly don't know that I was wearing very much of it at a time. So for setting spray, I have this e.l.f. Makeup Mist and Set, which I've had for ages. You can tell the bottle is very beat up. You can barely read it anymore. I honestly can't tell you how well it works because it just seems like it's water and maybe a little bit of alcohol for drying purposes. The spritzer on it is not great. It will leave big fat droplets on your face if you hold it too close. It's almost empty. I think I bought this at an Old Navy. It's down to like here. I was honestly just trying to use it up this month. I think I'm going to just throw this out because I have a lot of setting sprays and there isn't really anything in particular special about this one. Next up, I want to talk about cheek products. The first one here is the BareMinerals Gen Nude Powder Blush. The shade is Call My Blush. This is a mini. I believe it was in a Sephora favorites type of thing sometime last year. It's a very soft pink. I like the texture of it, but it's not overly pigmented, so you do have to build it up a fair bit for it to really show up on the cheeks. But once you do that, it gives like a very natural sort of flush, and I think it's really pretty. This is also from BareMinerals, and it's also a mini. It's their Bounce and Blur and Mauve Sunrise. This is even tinier. I think I redeemed some Sephora rewards points to get this a while ago. It's a different formula. I would say the texture is spongier than the other one, but the pan is so tiny, it's kind of hard to get a brush in here. However, it's a nice rich color and there's a bit of shimmer to it. This is an Ofra blush in the shade Charm. This is a very rich color, very finely milled and very pigmented. I would compare the texture of this to the e.l.f. primer infused blushes, which I really love. I had one in my Caboodle in January. Ironically, did not wait for the e.l.f. month to do that. So I would call that a pretty decent dupe if you don't want to shell out the money for an Ofra blush, and they're very cheap. This one was from an Ipsy, and I believe the pan is full size, but the packaging is a little different. Like, this is pretty cheap looking packaging. I think if you actually bought one off of their website, it would have a better quality kind of compact. Weirdly, this is the only Ofra powder product that I've seen that doesn't have that sort of like wavy line stamped into the top of it. I'm not sure why. Speaking of the pattern pressed into the top of Ofra products, this is their highlighter in the shade Star Island. I think this was the first powder product I got from Ofra, if not the first Ofra product I have ever gotten. This also came in an Ipsy. It's also full size, but in the cheaper packaging. I was blown away by this when I got it. Much like the blush, it's very pigmented. It's very soft. I hadn't tried a lot of highlighters when I got this, and even now that I have a lot more, this still stands up. It's a great staple product to have on hand, like a classic champagne gold shade. I have used this a ton and barely made a dent in it. So this is a magnetic palette, and I am afraid to hold it upright for too long because I don't want anything to fall out. I will post a picture of it beside me so you can see what I'm talking about. I had already had this palette. It was mostly empty from an old roommate. When I got it, it had this one kind of reddish rose blush in it. It is from Ofra, but I don't know the shade name, as is the palette. That blush is really nice. It's not a color that I have a lot of in my collection. It's got a very, very slight shimmer to it, especially in the winter. It's cool toned, but very elegant. The one highlight in the far corner, the golden highlight, I got in an Ipsy. I think it's from Ciate London. It came loose as a pan. I think it's okay. It's kind of powdery and not very vibrant In all honesty, I think it would perform better as an eyeshadow shade rather than as a highlighter, but I have a lot of kind of cool toned gold eyeshadows, so I have decided to toss that one. The other blush, the pink one, big highlighter, and the bronzer are all from Ofra. They came in the Good To Go palette, which was in my BoxyCharm Premium from January. They might have looked familiar if you are also a BoxyCharm subscriber. Case looks like this. I popped them out just so I could put them in the magnetic palette because there were a few shades in there that I wanted to include this month. And after some tough negotiation, I managed to get everything in there. I might disassemble this palette here and put them all back in. I haven't really decided yet. My first impressions of the blush, bronzer, and highlight were very bang on. They're all richly pigmented. The highlight in particular is so beautiful. The one thing I will say about the highlight is that the two kind of bronzy shades look very similar on the face. Also, the white one looks a lot like Star Island, which I already have. I will talk about the shadows from this palette later on. This is the e.l.f. Modern Metals Cheek palette, and I want to rave about this so much. I won't because it's discontinued, and I always feel bad when I get really excited about something that nobody can buy anymore. It is like one of the e.l.f. products that I really, really wish they would bring back because I think it's so good. The Modern Metals collection came out in, I think, 2018. There was this, there was an eye palette, and I think 2 lip products, one of which I have. You'll see that later on when I get to the lipsticks. I think it's the perfect cheek palette, especially for someone of my skin tone. They are pretty pigmented. I never expected to like an orange blush, but this one here, which is kind of like a cantaloupe shade, honestly, looks really soft and pretty once you apply it. I love this layout. Each of the blushes are paired with a highlight that is complementary, but you can really mix and match them. The formula is everything good about e.l.f. cheek products. Very soft, very blendable, wears really nicely. This is also, in my opinion, like the perfect size for a blush and highlight palette. You have a lot of options without it getting too bulky or overwhelming. These are the Iconic London Illuminating Drops in the shade Original. I love these, as I mentioned, and I think it was January when I first was using them as well. I did decide to bring them back just because I was doing Iconic London this month. They're really bright, really smooth. However, this month I did have a lot of highlight options, and so I primarily used them to mix in with the Becca foundation because it was getting a little too dry. And usually when people talk about mixing a liquid highlight with their foundation, they use it for like a luminous glowing effect, but I really didn't notice much of that. And I was really using them just to thin out the consistency, and they worked great.